So while the Madlanga Commission investigates allegations of corruption and interference, including alleged links to cartels, police recently uncovered a crystal methamphetamine lab in Volksrust, that's in Mpumalanga. 5 Mexicans and a South African were arrested in that operation, while an estimated 350 million rand worth of drugs were found on the property. Let's take this further with Mashaile, who is a security strategist as well as retired Interpol Ambassador. Good to have your time on the SABC. So I wonder if this sort of thing in Volksrust is more prevalent than we realize in South Africa.
It is prevalent, Tembi. When you look at the initial Limpopo lab worth 2 billion rands and the drugs there, or the drug value there, and then you go to the theft of 200 cocaine worth 200 million in the Eastern Cape from the Hawks 13 store, meaning warehouse. This tells you that there is a concerted effort by international or transnational organized crime gangs, specifically manufacturing drugs. And you and are seeing a change in modus operandi. Normally, we would learn of cocaine being dropped in and around our shoreline, that is around Durban and that kind of stuff. Now we are seeing West Africans being involved, meaning the 5 North Americans using the transatlantic route into West Africa going through down to East Africa, and from East Africa coming and establishing a base in and a camp in South Africa. This is exactly what the Mexicans have done. They have changed that tactics of manufacturing in Mexico and now manufacture in South Africa, which is a serious cause for concern for all of us involved, law enforcement as well as the criminal justice cluster.
So strategically then, for the cartels involved, you referenced that case in Limpopo, this is in Mpumalanga. What does the location of these massive meth labs tell us about the thinking of the criminals? Why in those parts of the country? I mean, in the Mpumalanga instance, for example, this meth lab was being run on a farm. Tembi,
criminals are very smart when it comes to doing analysis, police intelligence analysis. They will know, Tembekile, that patrolling in that area is almost zero because you don't have well-resourced rural areas patrolling vehicles. The nature of the terrain is a hindrance to ordinary 15 minutes patrolling as in urban areas. In those areas, the rough terrain demands for the 4x4s and all those kinds of vehicles that will be able to traverse that terrain. They know, criminals, that in that area, you don't have anyone who is going to bother you. Remember the story of Mr. Mike Mangena, who was arrested some time back for a drug lab in the Parelsville area. It's a farming area next to Randfontein. So you would, from these few examples, realize that in order for the criminals to operate, they would want a space that would not be infested by police, and they should be able to see police patrol vehicles from a distance so that they can be able to make a beeline to the nearest bush or dump the contraband, as it were.
So the Global Initiative for Transnational Crime had, in a recent report, not too long ago in fact, described South Africa as a major consumer of methamphetamine. But where does that consumption happen? Where do we see it in communities being sold and destroying lives in some cases?
Tembi, methamphetamine is one of those cheap drugs that are now being flooded into our townships, our communities. Our communities in the townships, because of the volume, are able to cater for the cost of the manufacturers, as opposed to cocaine, which is expensive and cannot necessarily be consumed by the township market. which would be specifically for your urban areas, your suburbs, for the want of a better word. Now, these are the hotspots. When you look down in the Western Cape, you realize that it's methamphetamine, what you and I called tick for a descriptive noun. And you now see that that logic that has been trained in on the Western Cape is now being spread throughout South Africa for the expansion of that product market.
If I may,
that illicit product market.
If I may, I know, Mr. Mashaile, that you do have to go. You've got another engagement, so I'm going to roll one or two things into one here as we let you go. The first being just on Limpopo and Mpumalanga as our case studies then. When we spoke about the drug bust in KZN earlier this year, these are drugs that I believe have come through the port, so by sea, right? Limpopo and Mpumalanga are border provinces, so there you can cross by car or by foot, etc. Is that how these drugs are being moved, I wonder, through the rest of the region, because meth popularity is growing there? And when you look at a 350 million rand drug lab on a farm in Mpumalanga and a handful of arrests, 5 people arrested, how do we begin to crack down on that sort of thing significantly when at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry we're told that some of the most senior people in the police service are doing the bidding of cartels? And should we expect, in fact, at the Commission that there might be very well be an international link that is worth exploring in the cartel conversation?
You're quite correct, Tembi. One, there is involvement of some law enforcement agents. 2, it is important that we should engage the states where these drugs are manufactured. You know, West Africa is known as the narco state, the narcotic state. And I am sure that the existence of a transnational organized crime, some of them operating in the heart of Sentin, for the want of a better position or area or location, those that are selling high-end refined drugs. So yes, the Madlanga Commission must help us through the testimony of those who are witnesses, expose the hotspots so that law enforcement agencies can devise new strategies, counterintelligence, and eradicate the distribution and manufacturing of drugs, as well as destroy the new methods by the international drug syndicates.
And Mashaile, good to talk to you as always, security strategist and retired Interpol Ambassador.